What's going on, guys? I am Thaddeus McNeil, and I teach people how to tell their stories so they can change lives. And today, we're going to talk about the stories that you're telling yourself about your unhealed wounds. And the reason we're doing this is because I understand myself what it's like to live with unhealed wounds and how it can wreak havoc in your professional life, your relationships, your social life, all these different things, to the point where certain things aren't functioning the way they're supposed to because you still are dealing with these wounds, or you're having relationships and these wounds are getting in the way of you communicating, or those relationships being in a blissful state. Oftentimes these unhealed wounds are things that we haven't addressed or things we're not even aware of. And we're going to talk about some ways to overcome them, identify them. We're going to talk about a framework to help you heal from them. Now, I want to walk you through this process because I've walked myself through this process. I'm a person who's lived with tons of unhealed wounds. I didn't grow up with a dad wound. I lost my father, my mom, my mother, and my oldest daughter in just a few short months, like a 6 month time span, and that was painful. And I had to deal with those wounds. Not only that, I've been through an ugly divorce. I've had issues with my kids. I've had issues with other people. And so I have had unhealed wounds just like anybody else has. And I want to show you the framework that helped me walk back and learn and gain and become a whole person through this process, just the process of growth. So I just want to share this with you. So let's jump into it. Okay. Like I said, we're going to talk about how you're dealing with those unhealed wounds. So I'm going to share with you a framework called Rewrite. It's a 6 step path from being wounded to wisdom. And I look forward to walking you through this process. Hopefully, it's a blessing to you like it was a blessing to me. I'm also going to share some scripture and some biblical base for some of this, although it's mainly scientifically based. All right, so let's jump into it. Now, you are not the only one carrying something. I need you to understand you're not by yourself with the things that you've been through. Other people have been through similar things. Matter of fact, you'd be surprised at all the people around you who are dealing with the same issues but have been quiet about them. Most of us experience the hit and keep moving, and without ever stopping to examine what the hit did to us or on the inside of us. And I know I've lived like that, and a lot of men live like that, where something would happen and we just keep moving because life keeps going, and we are pressured to keep performing, keep producing, keep doing all those things. But we took some type of major injury, and we have to sometimes we have to sit down and deal with that. It's real damage that happens to us in the story we built around the wound, not always at the moment of the impact. So, a portion of what I'm going to talk to you about today is the story that you have about this wound, how you're framing it, what narrative do you have about the thing that you've been through. I have had to change the narrative, and that is the part that got me through. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So, let's talk about the wounds. Let's talk about the stuff, man. The wound talk. There are lies that our narratives are are holding us to, and we don't even realize it. So, for example, this first lie that I am too much or not enough. More oftentimes than not, we hold that narrative because we want to shrink back and we don't want to do anything that puts us in harm's way. So with that said, your brain starts to protect you. And so your brain is helping you feed these stories to protect yourself. And it's not necessarily true that you're too much or you're not enough. That that security mechanism is designed to help you like stay out of the limelight and stay out of harm's way. But it necessarily isn't true about your life. Love is unsafe, or you'll have to protect yourself. With that said, again, something else that's untrue. So your mind begins to tell you these things. And so now you may not enter into a relationship, or you may be cold in a relationship, or you may not communicate the way you should, or you may not commit completely to the relationship because you're protecting yourself because you've been through something that has told you this lie. All right. It's just like being too much or not enough. Something has told you this lie that you are. And now you're going with the narrative. Success is for other people, not someone like me. So there's times you stumble or you have a failure or you are not as successful as you want to be. And sometimes Matter of fact, a lot of times we'll see somebody else have success and go, man, I wish I could. Man, I can't get there or something like that. But what happens is, again, you've had something in your life to tell you this lie and you've held on to it. And that narrative is now directing how you think. And it becomes the lens in which how you're viewing life and your opportunities. Things always fall apart. So why get comfortable? You are now putting yourself in a position where you don't want to try, or you're giving yourself an out to try or to push through hard things. The truth is, it's again a lie. Yeah, I know it feels like things always fall apart. I know it feels like things never seem to work out, but it's not true. But when your brain creates the narrative, that is what always happens. That is all you'll ever see. And so you'll feel like you're constantly experiencing that because now that you're telling yourself that story, the lens is clouded to be able to see only through that lens. And that's all you see is things falling apart. You'll probably struggle seeing the great things that are going on around you. But I need you to understand these are all lies that the wound can lead us to believe, but they're not necessarily true. We don't even realize we're narrating. We just think that life, or yeah, we just think that that's how life goes, right? And that's just who we are, but it's not true. There are lies that you can overcome. And let's talk about how we overcome those lies. Here's some data points I think you need to focus on, okay? 70% of all adults worldwide have experienced at least one traumatic event. You're not the only one. You're not the only one that went through the thing with your parents. You're not the only one that went through the thing with your spouse, your ex. You're not the only one that experienced that at work. You're not the only one that randomly happened to. It's not just you. Okay. So, in other words, life didn't single you out to hurt you. That's what I want you to understand from that. 13 million Americans are living with PTSD in any given year. We're not just talking veterans, we're talking just normal people. Guys, let me give you another way to see this. So, PTSD can come from car accidents. PTSD can come from an abusive relationship. PTSD can come from a hostile work environment. PTSD can come from abuse. PTSD can come from so many different things. And I want you to understand that you are not alone in the things that you've been through. And if other people can get through them, you can too. 50 to 66% of all trauma survivors experience some type of post-traumatic growth. You know what that means? That after the fact, that there's an area for them to grow in, okay? I want you to see that stat for an opportunity to understand that you can grow. The wound doesn't define you, but your story you've been telling about it just might do that, okay? So again, if we tell ourselves the correct story, the wound will not have any power over us. All right, let's talk about why the story is the solution, okay? I believe that anytime a person has gone through something, the narrative that they form can be adjusted if they're aware of it, okay? When we transform fragmented traumatic memories into structural stories, the brain's amygdala actually calms down, okay? You have the ability to narrate your story and reframe the tough thing that you've been through. A new neural pathway forms. This is how you begin to move with the restructuring of the framework. Okay. This is how you reframe or begin to reframe your story. When this happens, new neural pathways form. That means you think differently. Okay. It's automatic for the body to have a physiological response. Emotional regulation improves. Okay. Less outbursts, less emotional responses. It's okay to be emotional, but now just the thought, or anytime you come in contact with whatever that wounded thing is, you're able to control your emotions a little bit better. It's less fear or trauma responses. The chaos of the wound starts to make sense. You start to understand why you did some of the things you did, why you chose some of the ways you chose, and maybe why the people around you responded the way they did. Fear response in the amygdala, in the amygdala calms down. A part of the story is it builds fear in you. Fear to move forward, fear to get in relationships, fear to have contact, fear to do certain things. And that fear is disempowering. That fear holds you to a place you probably don't want to be and encages you and imprisons you to whatever circumstance or narrative that you're telling yourself. Okay? This is not who you are. This is not what you were intended to be. God is not giving you the spirit of fear, but power, love, and of a sound mind in order for you to move forward in this life without carrying the ball and chain of that wound. You don't have to have you don't have to white knuckle yourself through life. You just have to learn to tell your story differently. White knuckling, meaning you're just bearing down and grinning it. You're just taking it. You're just enduring it. All right. So before we go into this next part, I want you to see me as I say this to you. I know what you've been through is super hard. I don't want to diminish that which you've went through. I know what it's like to lose. I know people have been through abuse. I know you've probably been through traumatic experiences that you've survived. I can't imagine. I get comments sometimes, and I've been a soldier where I've seen just some of the worst of the worst. And being a commander, sometimes you hear about stories that your soldiers have gone through. Their parents or siblings or brothers or kids, all kinds of craziness where people have gone through tough things. I need you to understand you are not the wound. You are not the wound. It is not your identity. It may be something that you've been through, but it's not who you are. And that's what I really want you to really want to stress here. It is not who you are. And I know it was bad. I know it was distasteful. I know it was something that you wouldn't have chosen for yourself. But there's a better way. You don't have to live with it. You don't have to endure it all your life. It doesn't have to be the shadow that follows you or the negative dark cloud that surrounds your life for the rest of your life. You can get past this. You can beat this. You can do more than be in this cage of imprisonment to the wound of the worst thing that ever happened to you. It is not your life. That is not the life that God has destined you for. The Bible says you're more than a conqueror. And if you're more than a conqueror, you have to live as more than a conqueror. And now we're going to talk about a framework that's going to help you do that. All right. Cool. Let me see. All right. Move forward. All right. Here's the framework. Okay, guys. The rewrite framework. This was the 6-step process that we talked about earlier. All right. We want to move from wounded to wisdom. All right. So the R is recall. We're going to name the thing without judging it. Okay. We're not going to judge the people around it. We're just going to talk about what it was so we identify specifically what was the thing that wounded you. All right. Then the E is for excavation or excavate. We're going to uncover the limiting belief that it created because that's the damage that the wound did. Okay. The next thing is W, witness. See yourself as a survivor, not as a victim. Okay. We're going to talk about how the thing, if you see it correctly, didn't happen to you, but may have happened for you. And I know that's difficult, but we'll talk about it. Then we're going to talk about the R of reframe, rewriting the meaning, not the facts. Okay. We're just going to talk about what it means to you. Not going to adjust what it was that happened. All right. We're going to talk about integrate, how we weave the wound into your foundation. You probably feel like it's already a part of your foundation. But now we're going to talk about how we weave the wound as a thing that we can stand and build on. Okay? Now we're turning it into something that works for us. Then we're going to talk about transmit, how we use that story to lift somebody else because it's not always about you. And I know sometimes you think you went through something and it was by yourself, but you didn't realize that that thing was going to be a blessing to somebody else because you got through it. So let's jump into it. So this first our recall, all right? This is step 1. All right? You have to name the thing before you can face it. This is just calling it out, identifying it, all right? Healing starts with honesty, not minimizing, not dramatizing, all right? Calling the experience what it was plainly without judgment of yourself or the offender. This is where most people stop before they even start. I'm gonna give you an example of calling this out. So without judgment. So I grew up with a mom, she's a single parent, right? There's a story I used to tell where um, there was a time where I used to come to my mom and money was limited. It's just me and my mom, and me, my mom, and my brother. And she would say sometimes, our parents would say, "Hey guys, don't ask me for anything. I just don't have it." And she said this so much, not necessarily maliciously, but she said it so much. It created a mindset in me not to ask her for anything. So when I was in high school, later on, high school entire choir went to New York. There was one person that didn't go. It was me because it was $500 to go. So I didn't ask my mom. That wound that she created made me not ask her for the money to go to school. Now, what I had to understand was my mother was working her tail off and she had limited access to capital. When she found out, she was like, "Why didn't you say anything?" And I shared to her, all the things that she'd been telling me for years. And so she ended up paying for it. And so I don't judge my mother for it. I just understand what it was, because I also have to see sometimes that the people involved were going through things themselves. All right. So we're going to focus on the thing. And so what that taught me at the time was scarcity, a mindset that there's never enough. And I had to deal with that wound. I had to call it out that there's never enough, not my mother, but the wound and the mindset that came of it. Okay. So after calling it out for what it really is, or I am still softening the blow for everyone else comfort. Wait, I'm gonna say that one more time. I think I confused myself a little. I am calling this what it really was. Okay. Ask yourself, am I calling this what it really was? Or am I still softening the blow from what for everybody else's comfort? This part is hard because oftentimes this deals with something else. Now, for example, if if your parents did something to you, being honest about it, not necessarily sugarcoating it to comfort maybe that parent, but you have to tell the truth about what it was. It's the only way you're going to get over it. Here's the action steps. All right. We're going to write down the experience in 1 to 3 sentences. Name it plainly. For me, I wrote down, I never felt like I had enough money or my family had enough money. 2, identify whose voice you hear when you replay it. Is it yours or somebody else's? Is it your parents or your exes or the offending person or a boss or somebody like that? Or is it your voice? That's something you're going to have to identify. The next action step, you're going to ask, am I in denial or am I ready to see this clearly? This is so hard. This is so hard because oftentimes we're doing what we have to do to protect ourselves and move forward, because sometimes confronting that truth is very painful, but we have to do it if we're going to take the next steps to be healed. All right, so let's jump into E. And I'm going to try to go through these a little bit faster. E, wounds don't just leave marks, they leave messages. Oof, oof. So this is what the wound did to you. This is where you go beneath the surface to uncover the limiting belief, the wound planted in you. I'm not enough. I'm unlovable. The only way to stay safe is to stay small. Identify the lies. The lie is the basis for everything that changes next. All right. We got to figure out what's being told to you. Here's what I need you to ask yourself. What specific lie did the wound plant in me? And where do I still see it running in my life? Oh, this is hard. I give you an example for myself. Um, the one I just talked to you about a second ago, like, as I got older, I started having my family. I kept catching myself say the same thing to my kids. Hey, I ain't got money. Hey, look, y'all can't. I ain't got money. I ain't. No, no, no. Don't ask me. Don't. And I kept saying that and I passed that to my children. That was hard, but I had to be honest about it. And I didn't blame my mother. I held myself responsible for it. But it was a wound, and it lodged in me a limiting belief, and I had to dislodge that limiting belief. Okay. All right. Action steps. Complete. Because what happened, I started to believe that I blank. Identify that. Identify what that thinking is or what that lack of thinking is. Okay. List three, list three ways belief has shown up in your decision or your relationships. This is where you're going to see the evidence of it. This is where you're going to see it. Okay. Consider working with a therapist. This step goes deeper than we can see alone. I had to get help. I had to go get a therapist, man. Um, Saw a guy for a while, and he walked me through the processes as I identified a lot of this stuff to myself, but I couldn't unpack everything. So I am telling you, hey, a lot of you guys are going to need therapists to go through this stuff. You're going to need certified therapists with actual doctorate degrees. Um, and no shade, but maybe. So, like, you need people who are certified to do this, who can walk you through this, professionals. For real. For real. It was a benefit to me. All right. Let's talk about the witness. You are a survivor, not a victim. You are a survivor, not a victim. You are a survivor, not a victim. Not someone to be pitied. You're not a person to be pitied. Okay? You've been through a tough thing, but you survived. You are still here. You're still working. You're still producing. You're still loving. You're still reaching. You're still growing. The wound didn't stop you. It may have slowed you down, rerouted you, altered your path, but you are still moving. And that's not nothing. That is everything. Guys, you made it through. A lot of people, the things that you've been through would have destroyed them or derailed them to the point where there was no return to normalcy in life. And their new normal is something that they should not be living with. You're here. You've made it. Here's a question you should ask yourself. What evidence do I have that I am more than what the wound said I was? Okay. I need you to look back over your life and I need you to see how the lie is not holding up. Okay. Let's talk about the action steps. I want you to write 5 ways you are still standing that the wound could not take from you. All right. I did this. I remember writing down that after certain things that happened to me, I still know who I am. I still believe in myself. I'm still confident. I still have the courage to move forward. I think it was something like, I, I, I still believe that my life is good. I still believe the best in people. Those are just some examples. So part 2, or step 2 of this, say it out loud. I survived this. I am still growing. I am more than a conqueror. I am more than a conqueror. Repeat it until you believe it. I survived this. I am more than a conqueror. Nothing by any means shall harm me. I survive. I am a survivor. I have made it. I am not a victim. Whatever you got to say, something to this effect. And you need to be repeating this. This needs to be on loop in your mind. Whether you got to write it down, put it on your shower mirror, or you need to put it in your car, you need to put it at work, you need to put it somewhere where you can see it and say it consistently until you believe it, till it becomes a part of your story. All right? You want to shift from the language of victimhood to the language of survivor. Catch yourself in real time. I have done this so many times where I've unconsciously said, or subconsciously, like, oh man, like I didn't know if I was going to make it. No, I made it. I made it. I made it. You have to catch yourself. You have to catch yourself sometimes, okay? There are times where you're going to have those thoughts still reoccur, regardless of what you've been saying on repeat. What you're going to have to do, though, is catch yourself to replace those thoughts. The more often that you can do that, the faster you'll get to that healing space. All right, let's talk about reframe, the R, the next R. All right, we are not erasing what happened. I want to say that again. We're not erasing what happened. We are refusing to let it be the only thing that happened. I love this part, the reframing part. The wound was a lesson, an experience, knowledge you can carry that someone else desperately needs. You are taking back the power of the story. What happened to you has also happened for your growth, even if it's impossible to see. The mindset is it happened to you, It happened for you, not to you. It happened for you, not to you. There's something to be gained from this. And all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. It's going to work out in your favor. I know it sucked. I know it doesn't look like it. It is going to work out in your favor if you can shape your mind to see it that way. But you're going to have to actively reframe your story to do that. You're going to have to ask yourself, if this wound was actually working for my growth, what was it trying to produce in me? Mm, this is a deeper part. Okay. What is this wound trying to actually produce in you? What is it trying to get out of you? What was the lesson to be learned? What was the thing to be gained? All right, let's move to the action steps. I need you to ask, what did I learn about myself that I couldn't have learned any other way? Sometimes you have to go through really, really hard things to find out what you're made of. I know I went through Marine Corps boot camp. I didn't know I was that tough. I went through combat. I didn't know my mind would get through that unfragmented. Okay. Sometimes you go through stuff to find out who you truly are and what's really inside of you. More oftentimes, I guarantee you, somebody that's listening to this realized they were stronger than they thought they were. This is something that you have to figure out, but you can only figure out through going through tough things. Right. This experience taught me blank. Focus only on what you gained. Focus only on what you gain. Yes, there was a distasteful part, but if you only focus on the distasteful part, the hurting part, that's the only part that's going to prevail. But the lesson that you learn can reshape your life. Okay. If you can't find the lesson yet, right? I'm still searching, and I believe it's there. It'll show up. Sometimes this stuff takes time. Again, sometimes you may have to do this with somebody else. But sometimes this stuff takes time, but I need you to understand there is a lesson there. You won't go through it for nothing. Next, we're going to talk about integrating. The wound no longer defines you, you define it. This is where your power begins to come back to you. Now you weave the experience into your foundation, not as a scar to hide, but as a stone that strengthens your structure. This is where your story creates meaning and purpose. You become the improved version of yourself that the experience already had the potential to produce. That the experience always had the potential to produce. This is how you become the best version of yourself, how you turn that thing in your favor. Okay. You're going to ask yourself, where in my life right now can I put that lesson from this wound to work? What did you learn? Are you actively using the lesson? Where? Where? Don't just go through this. Don't just hear something like this and let it be a waste of time. Don't just be a hearer but a doer. Okay? Take this opportunity to apply the lesson. You went through it. Don't let it be in vain. Okay? Action steps. Identify one area where the lesson from the wound can be applied immediately and then apply it. Okay? Update your inner story from this broke me to this built me differently. Okay? Next step. Share the integrated version with someone you trust. All right? Speaking it reinforces the past into the neural paths. I want to say neuroplasticity so bad, but um, the more you get a chance to reframe the story, the more it now becomes a part of who you are, the soul of your story. All right, now we're going to talk about transmission. All right, where the real power of all this comes out. Your story is not just something that you got through, it's a bridge. All right. Stop being quiet about your story. Stop being ashamed of it. Take what you survived, the silver lining that you found, the strength you uncovered, and use it to help somebody else find their strength. Your pain becomes someone else's restoration. I need you to understand your story isn't that wound isn't just something you survive. It's a tool. It's something you can use to mentor, to teach, to help somebody go from where they are to where they could be. Okay? It's a bridge to help them get across their worst times. Share your story. Your story could change somebody's life. I know of stories that have saved lives. I saw a military leader share a story that a person of abuse that she went through. She didn't realize that another soldier was going through that same abuse. That soldier had the courage when she didn't have it before to stand up and say she was going through an abuse. And when she identified the person that was abusing her, we confronted that person and we found out that that person was abusing worse two other people. What that means is the lady who shared the story saved somebody's life or saved them from going through some horrific experience. Share your story. You never know how we can save somebody's life. You'd be shocked at the people around you going through the exact same thing and need to hear it from you. Somebody they're familiar with, somebody that they know, somebody that they see their lives. All right. Ask yourself, who in my life right now needs to hear the part of the story that I've been keeping quiet about? It does take is this is going to require courage, but you have that courage. Actions. Identify one person in your circle going through something similar. Reach out this week. Don't delay. Don't miss. God is telling you right now, there's somebody that just popped in your head that's going through it that you need to reach out and tell your story so they can have the strength that they need. You don't know how bad they need it. You don't know how bad they need it, but you are their lifeline. God is putting you on somebody's mind right now. You know exactly who that person is. Reach out to them. Reach out to them. Tell your story. Give them strength. Find one platform, a conversation, a post, a talk to share even one piece of your story. Don't be afraid to post your story, regardless how messy it is, regardless how you think about it, how you feel like it may not, it's not that big a deal. Somebody needs to hear it. Somebody's going through it. If not, it wouldn't have been on your heart to share. You know exactly what story you need to share. Remember, you just don't need it all figured out. You don't need to have it all figured out. Just be one step further down the road than the person that you're talking to. That's it. That's it. You'd be surprised how many lives you bless by doing this. Your wound is not your weakness. I'm going to say this again. Your wound is not your weakness. It's the most important part of your credential. If you earn, if you learn to carry it correctly. I want to say this. I said it earlier, went on a little rant. I know you've been through some tough stuff, but people need to hear your story. You need to hear your story. There are people who right now are going through the worst days of their lives. You've already survived what they went through. They need to know somebody else is surviving it because they're on the brink. They don't think they're going to make it. Some of them are having thoughts that maybe their life isn't worth it, that maybe they should take their own life, that maybe they're not going to make it through this. You already know that they can, but they don't know that they will. You have to share your story to give them courage. I share my story all the time. This is hard. I share my story about a terrible divorce I went through. And every time it's guys and women that come up to me and was like, yo, I needed to hear that. I didn't think I was going to make it. Bet. Losing my father, losing my oldest daughter, and my mother to cancer in a 6-month span. When I share that story, I'm always getting tears, but it's not about the tears. It's the strength that I give somebody else to make it through because they didn't know how they would get through losing their parent or losing somebody they love. Okay? You need to share your story. You're going to change somebody else's life. Somebody needs the impact, the influence, and the significance of your story and how you see it. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be polished. You don't have to be a orator. You don't have to be a professional speaker. What you need to be is willing to share that story. That story is going to empower somebody. And more likely, it's going to empower you. What you think, well, what you may not know is that oftentimes that you are going to heal by sharing your story. It's not just for a benefit for the listener, but it's also a benefit for the storyteller. You get a chance to unpack all that stuff that you've been through or focus on the gratefulness of you surviving, learning a lesson, and getting through it. And it's a blessing to be able to share your story. Not everybody made it through. Not everybody is in a position to share their story, but you are. It is incumbent upon you to share your story. So with that said, guys, I want you to share your story, okay? I want you to share your story. I want you to change somebody's life. All right, guys, this is the last slide. So your story is not behind you, it's the foundation of everything that's built on. If you're struggling with this, I understand it. What I need you to understand is there's a free mini course that's going to help you tell your story. It's over 5 days. It's going to drop in your email inbox, and it's going to be everything you need to tell your story. It's going to walk you through it step by step, how to build your signature story framework. Whether you're trying to heal from a wound or learn to teach people who you are and have an attractive story. From there, if you want faster, more direct help, there's a signature story blueprint. It's $17. It's going to help you with that rewrite journey. It's going to show you how to build your story in a way that's unforgettable and help you through that journey of your story. All right. And if you want even more help, just inbox me. Okay. We can talk about how we can do this one on one. I've done this with several people, and I guarantee you, I can walk you through understanding your story, telling your story. If you are a content creator, you're a veteran, you're an entrepreneur, or a leader, I'm going to walk you through exactly what you need to do to be able to tell your story in such a manner that nobody ever forgets you. You become people somebody always want to follow, people understand who you truly are, and you can create a magnetic brand for yourself. With that said, guys, thank you for allowing me to share this with you all. Like and subscribe, share this with somebody if you found value in it. And I just want to remind you that the goal is growth. Growth happens in the journey. Enjoy it.